My guest today is Tommy Johns, and Tommy Johns is a good friend of mine. He's a comedy magician. And Tommy, thank you for being here, man. I have known you probably 35 years. And my first,
I think it's about right.
I
Yeah.
think that's
Back when
about
we were
right.
both young,
Yeah.
both very young men. So yeah.
Well, yeah, I was younger. You look about the same,
That's right.
um, but I did a show for my cousin Hannah's church down
Yeah.
in Roswell, Georgia, or Marietta, Georgia. You were
Roswell.
in
Yeah.
the crowd, and I think at the time you were just a hobby magician. I'm not sure, but since then you've started performing, and you've got a great story about marketing and what happened. And so for the viewers, I am interviewing people who are successful in specific venues. And Tommy, we want to talk about the different venues that you work in, but specifically booking of shows for churches. So that's where we're going to go with this. And
Okay.
so tell us a little bit about your story, your background, how you began, and what got you where you are now.
Okay. First of all, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to spend time with you and to help anybody else that might be interested in my story. So, like a lot of kids, got interested in magic young. Performed my first magic trick for a Cub Scout talent show because I couldn't sing, couldn't dance, wasn't going to memorize a poem.
Right.
Um, and I thought the skits that they were doing were kind of dumb, so I learned how to do a magic trick and was very interested. Never saw a real live in-person magic show until my college freshman year at Samford University. And Irv Weiner, Mr. Fingers, was doing a parlor show for the students at the Baptist Student Union. And it was on my birthday, September 12th. That's one of the reasons I remember the date. The day I turned 18. And after he finished the main part of his show, he gave an intermission. He said, after the intermission, he said, I'm going to do some stuff that may upset you. It may gross you out. It may offend you. If you want to leave, you can leave. My girlfriend, who's now my wife at that time, left the room. I wouldn't have left if you tried to run me out. I wanted to see what else he could do.
Yeah.
And so I watched the rest of that, started looking for somebody to teach me how to do magic, found a guy on campus, Buddy Gray, who's pastor of Hunter Street Baptist Church in Birmingham now, a longtime pastor there. But at the time, he was a student at Samford, and he started teaching me how to do magic, mostly with the emphasis on ministry. Every trick he taught me had a gospel application. And
Mm.
that's the only way he did shows, unless he did a birthday party. He did a birthday party. It was just fun magic. But everything else he did for churches. And he had, 9 tricks and 9 little sermons that he did along with with each trick, or a different sermon with each trick, and then wrapped it up with a gospel presentation. And he taught me how to do that, and then called me about a year later and said, I'm sick. I need you to come by the frat house and pick up my stuff and go do a show for me tonight. And that was my first live paid performance. And I did the first trick, and the kids applauded. And I thought, oh yeah,
This is
is
me.
what I'm supposed to
Yeah,
do.
this is it. Yeah.
I I did magic as a side hustle for a number of years. I was a minister of youth, a minister of children, minister of education. I was minister of education at Roswell First Baptist and a part-time magician when we met in Roswell.
So you were
And then,
already doing magic as a part-time thing when we met 35 years ago.
right, right,
Okay. See, I thought you
mostly
were
birthday
just starting.
parties, that sort of stuff,
Mhm.
and a few church events. I did some things for our church, for free, but mostly I got paid for doing things. A lot of senior adult luncheons, a lot of potlucks, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then in 2000, our church got a new pastor, and he wanted to choose his own staff, and I wasn't his choice, and so was given a 6-month severance and encouraged to find other ministry opportunities. By that time, I'd gotten really
That felt
good.
good, didn't it?
That was a life changer, because for 20 years and for the foreseeable future, my identity was Tommy Johns, comma, minister of something. And so it was a really tough time. I can look at it now as a time of growth, as a time where God used something tough in my life to make something really wonderful happen. But at the time, I was devastated. I couldn't I could not figure out where to go from there, because it's hard to go somewhere in a church from nowhere. It's easy to go as minister of education here to minister of education there, but when you don't have a job, the first question is, what did you do?
Yeah.
And I did. That wasn't the reason that I didn't have a job. And so my wife and I talked about it. We looked at options. I live in Atlanta, in the Atlanta area, where there are a number of full-time performers. Dan Garrett, who recently passed away, Eric Anderson, Bill Clary, Ken Scott.
Yeah, Ken Scott. Yeah,
really good full-time
really good
performers.
magicians, right? Yeah,
they're really good. And so I took them all out to eat lunch, and I said, I'm thinking about going full-time. Give me some advice. And not a single one of them said run. Don't do it. Every one of them gave me encouragement. They'd all seen me perform. I was a member of the Magic Club, and so they knew who I was, and they encouraged me to give it a try. By the end of the first year, I had matched my church income. By the end of the second year, I had doubled it. And here I am 23 years later as a guy who has put 2 kids through college and has 2 paid for cars and almost paid for a house. And so, yeah, I'd say that awful thing that happened to me was one of the best things ever happened to me. So
yeah, I think there might be a message in that somewhere.
I think so. I think so.
So you really took a giant leap, but you didn't have a choice. You were kind of like the bird that was sort of pushed out of the nest. But what year was it that you did go full time? What year was that?
November of 2001. So the 9/11 had just happened. The economy was in real tense, and so it wasn't a great time to start a new business.
Mm-hmm.
But I did have a reputation built as somebody who could do a good job, and people like Ken and Dan and a couple of other magicians started sending their overflow to me. Or if they would get a job that was too cheap for them to consider, they'd send it to me, because at that time, my primary focus was paying the bills.
Yeah.
And so I did a lot of $150, $175, $125 shows to pay the bills, but it got me a lot of time in front of people. It got me, it was the first time I had ever had to worry about keeping a show packed and ready to go. Because before, I would do birthday parties. I knew my birthday party shows. And if a church called me about doing something, I'd have 4 or 5 weeks to prepare and make up the list of what I was going to do and practice and work up my spiel and then go do it. And now I was having to do show after show after show after show, several shows a week. It was the first time I had really had to stay ready. And so that was a real learning thing for me. But yeah, I'm so grateful to those guys for number one, trusting me enough with their business to let me represent them.
And listen, Tommy, I've talked to Ken Scott before when I got a job that I couldn't be down in his area. He couldn't do it. And I would say, what about so-and-so? Is this guy, good? And he wouldn't say anything bad about anybody, but he wouldn't recommend somebody that he didn't trust that could do a great job. Right. And so I really appreciate that. So if Ken's sending you out, or Dan Garrett sending you out as some of these top guys, that says a lot about what you do. Now, I got a question for you. So one of the places that you got work was from these magicians in the area. But other than that, what was your process starting cold, brand new, having to go out and make a full-time living? How did you do it? What was your process of marketing and getting yourself booked?
Well, at that time, I had a very basic website. I didn't have really a clue of what I wanted to specialize in. I just knew, all magic for all occasions, all ages.
Big mistake, but that's what you do when you start. Right. But that's a big mistake for magicians. Like, I'm everything on your card. I do corporate conferences and birthday parties. No.
Right.
No. Split those up. You can't. The guy that's going to pay you $5,000 doesn't want to know that you do a $150 birthday party.
Exactly.
But this is what a lot of magicians do: is they're a magic for all occasions, and that's a death sentence. But okay, go ahead.
so I started out that way. I got those referrals. I got in touch. I'd been keeping booking sheets, been keeping really good records on the people I'd worked for before.
Oh,
And
that's
so I
great.
got in touch with every single one of those people and said, I've launched this full time. I'm excited about the future. If there's any way you can use me or refer me. And so fortunately, I had done a good job at a lot of places, and they remembered me fondly, which was which was a plus.
Yeah,
Every time I attended a marketing thing at Cadabra, they step one, have a good show.
absolutely.
Step two, and then anything. I think you've even said that in your marketing stuff.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
so I had a decent show, and I showed up on time in a clean shirt, sober. So those things I had going for me.
Sober. You have to be. See, I knew I
Well,
was going to take notes. I'm going to write down. See, I hadn't thought of that. Showing
right.
up sober, man, that could be my problem right there. Now I got to interrupt you here.
Sure.
You say that you contacted these people, which one of the first things that we do on Entertainers Marketing Academy is exactly what you're talking about. But when you say you contacted these people to say this is what I'm doing full time, blah blah, what do you mean? You called them, you emailed them, you mailed them something. What did you do?
At that point, I was making phone calls.
Great.
I was not as good with email. And 25 years ago, not everybody I didn't have an email address on everybody.
Right.
I was still mailing paper invoices and contracts and stuff. And so
I do that today.
and for every one of those, I made a phone call. And is Joey there? He's not here. Can you tell me who took his place? And Catherine. So, hey, Catherine, this is Tommy. I'm a magician. I live in the Atlanta area. I did some shows for Joey in 2018, 2019, and I've decided to go full time. I'd love to send you some information. And so after talking with them, getting their permission, I would mail them a big envelope with some testimonials, and I learned a few things from Cadabra and other places, but a sheet of testimonials, poorly designed postcard because I didn't know any better that would tell a little bit about what I do, and would send those with a letter thanking them for allowing me to send the information. And a lot of those leads turned into other jobs.
Do you realize though that what you're talking about is one of the keys to being successful as a magician, and it's the thing that scares people the most. And I want to say to the viewers that the reason it scares you the most is because you think that you're cold calling and selling something. And when you realize that you're not selling something when you cold call people, you're merely finding out who's in charge. And if you talk to that person, you just tell them, this is me and this is what I do. And as you make plans for this year and next year, I just want you to know who I am. And I'm going to drop you something in the mail. I'm going to send you a link. I'm going to give you my phone number. And that's it. Nobody is calling people like you're trying to sell light bulbs over the phone. And this scares magicians so bad. Like, I'm going to call and they're going to chew me out or hang up on me or something. It's just if you get somebody like that, it's very, very rare, and you just move on,
Yeah.
I was coaching a guy one time, and I said, and we're coaching about schools, and I said, all right, I'm going to leave you on the phone. I'm going to leave you on the call here on the video, and I'm going to call this school. And he's like, no, you're going to call him right now? Are you kidding? And I called, and it was just nothing. He couldn't believe I was going to do that. It's nothing. But you did that, and that's one of the keys to being successful. All right, carry on.
And I've gotten a lot better with experience and in attending marketing, getting marketing material. Attending your course was wonderful because it gave me a real plan for what to do, when to do it, how often to do it, and how to stay in touch with those people. Because that's where I was really falling down on the job. Was I would send them the information and hope that they would put it on the bulletin board right in front of their desk, so the next time they had a need, they would remember me. And a lot of those people tossed it or put it in a file folder safely tucked away under M for magic or E for entertainment or T for Tommy or J for Johns, and they had no idea how to find it again if
Right.
they needed. And so, Entertainers Marketing Academy, I'll give a plug for that, has really helped me figure out how to stay in front of people, which is the key.
Right. It's one of the main keys. So we don't run out of time here. Man, I can't believe how time goes by so quick. And I got all these questions. I say the same thing every time, but I really want to move on. You do a lot of church events.
Yep.
And tell me what makes doing church events unique to booking any other kind of entertainment.
Well, for one thing, and this is true at schools
And
too.
you gave me a hint with the life insurance thing.
Right. I think the main thing, you're talking about going and doing a show. The booking
Doing
of
a
the
show,
show,
marketing the show. What makes it different?
is interesting because you never know exactly who to send it to, whether it's going to be a volunteer at the church, a staff member at the church, that sort of thing. Once you get past that, I think that one of the things that really makes or breaks you in the church market is whether or not you believe what you're doing, what you're believing, what you're selling.
Absolutely.
I do, as an ordained minister, as somebody who's been in children's ministry, as a committed Christian. Those are my favorite shows because I know that if I go into a library and encourage a kid to read, great, that's a good thing. But if I go into a church and bring somebody closer to Christ or bring somebody to a place where they're ready to make a commitment, there's nothing in the world more important than that.
That's right.
And, but you can't do that if you don't really believe it.
Yeah.
If you don't really believe in that. Now, can you do a show for a church fall festival if you're not a believer? Absolutely. You can go into an entertaining show that everybody enjoys. But to do most of the shows that I do for churches, where you have at the very least a devotional message, and at the strongest a message about salvation and a relationship with God, you've got to believe it. You've got to be committed to that. It'll show. They'll know that, and it'll absolutely show. I could give you my script. If you're a non-believer, I could give you my script. You won't be able to do it.
No, that's absolutely right. I don't know, because churches are one of the main things I do. That is very rare. I would say almost never that I get booked to do a church show that I don't deliver a gospel message at the end, that there's not scripture. I mean, if you don't really understand the message of the cross and the salvation and Jesus being the only way and the resurrection, you really should stay out of that. And people call it the church market as if it were the corporate market, but it's so unique because if you really don't believe that, you're going to go in there and try to give a message on moral character or something like that. And it's just not going to fly in a church. They know maybe if they just want you to entertain at the outside festival, they don't want a message, that's okay. But these churches, they want a genuine person to come, that genuinely knows and understands those things.
Right.
To come and speak and entertain.
Every once in a while, somebody will get me for an Upward event or some other type event like that, and they'll tell me, just kind of put the ball on the tee. The pastor wants to be the one to share the gospel message. And that's fine. I'm very respectful of what the client wants in that situation. There's some logic there. If you're going to make the most important decision you'll ever make in your life, make it with somebody you'll see again, not the guy that traveled into town and blows back out the next morning after breakfast at the Holiday Inn. And I get that, but there's just no greater joy than being able to share a life-changing message from experience.
Yeah.
And to be able to do that. And so, it's very rare that I don't, even when I do a senior adult luncheon, there's if not a gospel presentation, there is a devotion that is scripture based that I have an opportunity to share. And I love doing that.
Yeah, that's true. There are different ways to do it. And I think that some people think if they're going to do shows for churches, that all of their the tricks and stuff that they do have to have a gospel presentation. And there's nothing wrong with doing it if that's what you want to do. But my style, I don't know about you, but my style is I do the show for a church the same as I would do for a corporate thing. They don't see any gospel presentation or any message at all. all the way through the show until I get to the end, and then I'll tell a story, and the story will segue us over to the message, and I wrap it up. It's 90% entertainment, maybe 95% entertainment, 5-minute message at the end. And a lot of these events are very light, fun, Valentine banquets, appreciation dinners. They don't want a sermon. They just
Right.
want entertainment, but they want you to wrap it up, leaving people looking up. So what's your
Right.
style? What do you do?
I do much the same thing. I've told people before that I think I have to earn the right to be heard before I can tell them. And one of the ways
Yeah.
to do that is to give them a gift of entertainment. Now, when I do an Upward program, my Upward program is very sports centered. So
Well, tell
I
people
do
what an Upward program is, though, first.
Upward, and there are a lot of variations of that. It's a sports league for children in churches that is very evangelism centered. The whole purpose of it, the primary purpose of it, is to get the church, to bring people onto the campus of the church, or to get the church into the community, to share the gospel with them. And one of the tools they use is basketball, flag football, soccer, cheerleading.
Yeah.
And so it's a high quality program. I mean, it is very well organized and very well done. If you follow their guidelines, you're going to have a successful season of whatever sport you're doing.
Yeah, but I want to say this though, Tommy. Upward is a great program, but there are a lot of churches that did Upward for 15 years, and then they're like, we can do it. So if you're just trying to book Upward, you're going to miss out on a whole lot of things, because a lot of churches, if you're just looking for Upward, you're going to miss a bunch of them, because they're like, we do our own thing now, and they call it SOAR, or they call it all these other names. So if you're going to book yourself, you need to look for sports outreach, not just Upward.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. I've seen that as well. I've seen that shift away from, and there are a lot of reasons for that I understand. But you're exactly right. I think probably half of the ones that I do now are not Upward, but they look just like Upward.
Yeah, they do.
And so for the basketball one, for instance, I do a trick about basketball. I don't use a basketball. I use the professor's nightmare, and I talk about scoring 1, 2, or 3 points. I do something for cheerleaders. I do something to show my appreciation of the umpires. So it's not just my comedy show. It's very specifically designed for them, but I do, toward the end, say, one of the reasons that First Baptist Church does this program is that we're unapologetically reaching out to you, tell you about Jesus Christ. And then, like you, tell a story. I have a very small magic effect in that. I don't want that to take away from the message. I don't want people to sit in there scratching their heads, how did he do that? And then miss the most important part of the 45 minutes that I'm talking, because they're trying to figure out how in the world the girl disappeared, or the tiger, changed into a bunny, or whatever. And so I really downplay the magic at that point. I only use one real simple illusion as I introduce that, and then share the gospel. And I've had a lot of people tell me how much they appreciate the simplicity of it and the directness of it.
Right. Yeah.
It's not too complicated.
Well, you can't do a whole bunch of these shows without having some problems. And like 99% of them are great.
Oh yeah.
I remember one where there were all these kids on the floor of the gym and all these chairs behind it with adults. And the Upward leader said, we're going to pass out the basketballs first, and then we'll do the show. And I said, please don't pass out the basketballs first, because you're going to have kids, from 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old kids with basketballs dribbling them on the floor. Please don't do that. They did it. So the show and the message that I did was trying to get above all the basketballs. I did the gospel presentation. Then the pastor came up and did a 30-minute sermon on top of what I just did. And it's in a gym with bad acoustics. And it was just a roar. So it's just like, why did you bring me in to do this? This is crazy. So what do you have a story that will make us cringe? Because that's what we want, Tommy. We want to cringe. Make us cringe.
Uh, Similar to what you did, I've got two. Similar to what you did, they handed out the balls. The kids were sitting all over the auditorium. They handed the balls out at the beginning before my presentation, and the floor was sloped from the back of from the back of the room to the stage. And by the end of my program, there were 25 to 30 basketballs under the communion table and around the front.
They
So
roll.
that when we had because the kids would put them down, let go of them, whatever, they'd roll like plinko down through people's feet till they got to the front. So when we did the altar call, people were coming down. There's no place to kneel because there are basketballs everywhere, and so it was a similar thing to that. The one that I thought of most when you asked me about a cringeworthy moment, I did a show. They flew me in for, I think it was like St. Louis or someplace. And so they flew me in, they put me up at a nice hotel, take me out to eat dinner, met the staff, set up everything on the stage, and moved it to the back so that they could do the cheerleader thing. And I go and pray with the pastor. And when I come back out, everything up to everything I promised would happen happened. The brief thing with this, we're going to sing a song, and then we're going to bring you on. And so I moved my stuff forward and got ready to perform. After I did my first trick, I picked up a deck of cards. I pulled the cards out. Only magicians are listening to this, right?
Only magicians are going to see this.
So I pulled the deck of cards out, and the card on the bottom, which was my forced card, was not there. And I knew I had put it there. So I was in the process of showing that all the cards were different. I found it, put it back where it's supposed to be, did the trick. Good. Got ready to do the trick with the professor's nightmare with the 3 ropes, and the ropes were tied in a different way than I ever tied them. I could not figure out what had happened. Got ready to do something else, and when I reached in the box, things weren't where they were supposed to be. And got through the show, but in the back of my mind, this conversation was going on. What is happening here? What did I do wrong? How in the world did I come this far as a successful performer and checklist after checklist? And how did I screw up this many things?
I know what happened.
After offering the invitation, the youth minister came up. He put his arm around me. He said, "Man, I was messing with you. I was hoping you'd mess up. I mixed up your cards, and I retied your ropes, and I moved that stuff around in your box." And it's the only time I have ever, I mean, you don't know me real well, but I'm a pretty jovial guy, pretty nice guy. It's the only time I've ever lost my temper with a client. And I said, this church just spent airfare and everything close to $3,000 to get me here to share the most important message I will ever share with the kids in this audience. And you did everything you could to screw me up. You don't deserve to be a youth minister. That is not funny. And he was like, "Oh, man, calm down. And I don't know. It wasn't a disaster during the show. I'm not real proud of the way I acted toward this guy, but I was furious for what could have happened. And if it had messed everything up, and there were kids who came to know Christ that night as a result of the season, preparing them for that moment and them having the opportunity that I presented. And that might not have happened if I had fumbled on stage and gotten really off.
Well, that's, really, that, and I think it's a good point that whether it's that happened, I thought a kid did it, but I knew somebody did it. But part of being a pro is getting in a situation where you've never been there before, and suddenly things go wrong, and you maintain your poise. You maintain your poise, and you entertain them anyway, and you have enough skills and enough chops to get your card back, to get your rope back in position, to load things in your pocket that you forgot without anybody knowing what you did. An amateur is just going to fall apart, and a pro is going to maintain that and get things back on track. So, so you did it. I want to say this before we wrap up here. We're at 30 minutes. That one of the worst things you can do for a family night or an outreach for a church is to do a show that is designed just for preschool, 1st and 2nd grade, to do that for a family night, to talk to the families like they're 5 years old, and then present a gospel presentation that's like you would do at children's church. It's not. You got to treat people like an adult, and you entertain from the top down.
Mhm.
If you're entertaining the adults, the kids are going to trickle down. They're going to have a great time. If you're entertaining the kids, it's not going to go up. Entertainment's not going to go up from the kids up, but it will go down from the adults down. We're out of time. Well, I could just go on and on with you. I got more questions here, but I believe you've got some products for magicians.
Couple of
Oh,
things.
and let me say this quickly. You know, because another mistake people make is that they book church shows for $500. And these upward shows years ago, if you're really good at what you're doing, years ago they were 1,500.
Right.
Now they're more. You know, church events, they're not cheap things for events. They're 25. They're good paying events.
Right.
And so don't bring your $300, you know, library show, which is great for libraries because you're doing multiple shows all summer, you know, 3, 5, 7, whatever it is. But churches, these big events, these banquets and conferences and things, those are good paying shows. So you need to know that. Tell us a little bit about the products you have and how we get in touch with you.
One other thing, real quickly, I know that people who follow you know this. I have a website just for churches. Churches that find me and go to my website don't have any idea that I do birthday parties or library shows for $300.
Great.
And I'm not ashamed of that.
No, it's fine.
I just want them to know that I specialize in what they need. And so morethanamagicshow.com is my church show. And then I've got one for libraries and schools. I've got one for general stuff. Oh, so products. 2 things. I've got a book that I've written about how to do educational assembly programs. It's called Teach Me with Some Magic. It's a really, I'm real proud of it. I've had a book in me for a while. This past year, I was able to get it out and type it up and get it published. It's available on Amazon. If people want to buy it, they can contact me directly, and I'll sell it to you $5 cheaper than Amazon will. And we'll have that information on the podcast.
Yes.
And then magiccamp.info. One of the things that paid my light bill first few years was doing magic camps and magic workshops. Both my degrees are in education, and magiccamp.info tells how to I've got products there where I tell you how to sell, organize, and execute a week-long magic camp in the summer, spring break, Christmas break, how to do a 1-hour workshop for a library or an after-school program, how to do Magic Monday for 7 Mondays, and an after-school program with the Boys and Girls Club or whatever. There's a lot of really good information there as well. 20% discount on the listed price there if anybody just mentions Matt4, because I like you so
how
much.
do we find this? What website do we go to?
It's magiccamp.info. magiccamp.info is the one for that. And then my book is available on Amazon for $20, but it's $15 if you'll contact me directly and say, hey, I want to buy that. And my email address is tommyjohns@magictj.com.
So we'll get that on the screen. And if people, we'll get as much as we can on the screen. If anybody wants this, can't find you, they can email you. And I'll get my techie guru girl post-production to get all this stuff up. So if you're watching right now and you're like, how do I find it? It's right there on your screen. Tommy, it's been great. Thank you so much for being here, man. This has been so educational, so inspiring, and just wonderful. And I knew it would be. So thank you for having, for being here and being part of this interview series. And I know people are going to get a lot out of it.
I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.